good to you all in terms of plan of how we attack this?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So maybe, Patrick, do you want to pull up the current resolution, the current draft? And Clark, I don't know, do you want to start with, have you had a chance to, sort of think about the areas that you wanted to address? Maybe that's a point at which we start. And then Mike, I think maybe if you could also then lead us through the sort of moderate to large answers, make sure that we're covering that in the resolution.
Sorry, Steve, wouldn't it be good to start from the beginning of the resolution and just have Patrick read it, or you read it, or somebody read it, and we make comments as we go? Is that what we're talking about?
I guess
Yeah, Mike, go ahead if you have a suggestion.
Well, I was just recapping from last night, and we started and ended with SECRA last night. We did get through the part 2 with some good suggestions and notes from y'all. There's 2 Word documents that you have, and one is related to SECRA, the Notice of Determination of Significance. That's a little different than the resolution, which is a separate document. Mm-hmm. Now, we started going through that last night because that's born out of the yes answers and moderate to large impacts from the part 2 discussion. And that was the lion's share of last night, obviously. Right, so we had a couple items, I think items 9, aesthetic impacts, and question 18, consistency of community character. I think those were the ones where we had yes checked, and then we also had a moderate to large. So Victoria started going through that last night, and I think Chair, we'll leave it up to you if we want to continue with that route. Or, Patrick, if you have input on that. I think there was maybe a revised version that was set up based on the comments last night. But my thought would be to go through SECRA and then maybe do the resolution then.
It seems like to me we left off with that notice of determination of significance, right, Mike?
Yeah, no, yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Mike. I guess, Patrick, for some reson I thought that we had combined these into one document, but I sounds like I probably had that wrong, actually. So we need to notice of determination.
I thought we finished this, but I guess we didn't.
You have a notice of determination of significance under SECRA, which I understand was reviewed last night, thoroughly reviewed last night. And we also have a resolution, and this I think might be what you were referring to when you thought things were combined, Stephen. There's a resolution that makes a finding under SECRA as well as making findings under your code to approve or deny the application. So it's just one resolution that's going to resolve everything at the end.
Right. We do have the notice of determination that we reviewed last night, and there were a couple of questions about that. There was one instance in which Laura had identified a public park, but we didn't know the name of it. I don't know whether we've returned to that or resolved that. Also, there was one sentence that Teresa was unhappy with the wording, and because of Verizon fatigue, we did not address that wording issue. So I do think it would maybe just, if we just take a minute and look over the notice of determination and then move on to the resolution, that makes sense to me.
I think that makes sense. I would just say it's always tempting to go back and review everything over again. So if we're going to go back, let's try to make sure we're focused on these issues. So if that's the case, I can pull up what I believe is the most recent version of the notice of determination.
Mm-hmm. I think we got through most of it, but it makes sense to review it at least briefly. Mm-hmm. And again, thank you, Larry, for pointing out the things that were still open. I know we're all a little fuzzy from last night, but I want to remind myself where we were at the end and make sure we didn't miss anything. So this is useful to review from the top.
All right. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
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 All right. So the question regarding the public park, do you know where that was?
Yeah, it's impact on aesthetic, historic, and archaeological resources, and it's the last. It's the last sentence of the first paragraph. And I think the technical name of the park, the first park, is Promenade Hill Park. And I don't know what the name of the Second Street Park is.
Yeah.
The one that Laura couldn't remember last night.
Yeah, I emailed all this to Victoria. So what I was calling the Second Street Park is actually the community garden. There also is the gazebo at, at the site, but I have a feeling that that doesn't count because that's not a public area. So the community garden, but I also, again, emailed this to Victoria. It occurred to me that another site is the Greenport Conservancy, which is part of the Land Conservancy. I had an exchange with Victoria, who had CC'd the email to Mike and Stephen. Mike doesn't believe that the site is visible from the Land Conservancy. So I took a drive. Unfortunately, the hill there is chain linked off now, and the only way to get into it, as far as I know, is to hike in from Jocelyn Boulevard, and I just didn't have the time to do that. So it is a part of the New York State Hiking Trail, which intersects with the Land Conservancy Trail, and they both empty out onto Front Street. And as we know, Providence Hall is visible from that entire area. So in my opinion, the Columbia Land Conservancy, or I guess it's the Columbia Land Conservancy's Greenport Conservancy should be, just as a matter of a record, included.
Laura, I've taken photographs out there, and you can't see it from there.
You want to send me your photographs, John?
Yeah, what you see is you see the hill of the former landfill, and that blocks the view. You can see the top of Bliss Towers, but you can't see
These are the top
Providence.
of what towers?
Bliss Towers, but you can't see Providence.
Even from Front Street?
But I'll dig out the pictures and send them to you. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
So what are we going to include it, or do we think it's not?
It just, whatever. Don't include it. As a matter of record, I thought that it would be important to have it there. I do believe that you can see it from Front Street, but again, I just did not have the time to take a hike to the place where I wanted to take a photo, because I would have to hike in from Jocelyn Boulevard, and I just couldn't do it. So whatever you guys want to do.
Right. Well, if we have we have someone who has visited the site and has said that's not visible, I think we can safely omit it for now. But you have raised this issue, and it is part of the record before the planning board. So what I would propose doing right now is on the document
You can see it from Front Street. That's all I'm going to tell you, is you can see it from Front Street.
All right.
But that's fine.
On the document I have up, I just want to confirm I'm getting these names right. I would change Promenade Hill to Promenade Hill Park. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then the Second Street Park is the community garden.
Correct.
Correct. All right. So I would just draft community garden, AKA.
Well,
Where there's no
not an
confusion.
AKA.
You don't want an AKA?
Garden on Columbia.
Sorry, what was that?
Maybe we could just say community garden. I think it's plural. Gardens on Columbia Street.
All right.
Yeah. I called it erroneously called it Second Street Park. It's that's not the right term.
Okay. Does what I have on the screen reflect the changes that you wanted?
Yeah.
Okay. And then there was a second sentence where we were going to revisit the wording.
Teresa, do you remember which one that was?
No.
Teresa, I think you were talking about compliance with FCC missions, and I think we were talking about something along the lines of like designed to comply.
Oh, right. It's exactly right. Thank you.
Yeah, so there's, I think, one item under impact on health.
Mhm.
And I think Patrick could share that language. And then there was one last one, I think, under community character of how to wind up potential negative and potential positive. That's what I had in
So
mind.
it's the second sentence of the second paragraph on human health. The project has been designed to comply with all applicable.
Oh yeah, impact on it. Okay. You first forgive me because when I got home today, I was trying to read the resolution. Okay, impact on human health. Okay, I think I was saying that, okay, what is being said here is so definite, and could it be rewritten as, we're making a definite statement, set the will not result. I mean, could that be rewritten and not be
Where
so?
does it say will? Where does it say? What sentence are you?
The project will not result in a significant adverse impact on human health. It says will not result in a significant adverse impact on human, will not.
Right.
From contaminants as discussed in the secret handbook.
Well, I mean,
Okay, well, that's from the secret handbook, and we talked about that. And then Teresa, it goes into the second paragraph, which I agree we could work on a little bit, because that discusses RF emissions, not chemical.
Oh yeah, we did put secret handbook in there discussing. Okay, so we did put that one. It was the second paragraph, right? Yeah, let's work on that.
Yeah, I think that's the one that could take some comment.
Talking to me. Oh, Mike, and everybody else. I just don't feel we need to be so definite. It's like we're coming out saying we know this is definite. Yes, you've done your job and you've done a lovely job. But do any of us know what's going to happen later?
How about this? In the second paragraph, the project has been designed to comply with all current applicable FCC safety guidelines.
That sounds great.
All right, now with that change, are we done with the negative declaration? Or the determination, rather?
I think there was one last one on the very last section, Patrick.
All right, the consistency with community plans?
Community character, the next one down.
Yes.
So right before other potential impacts, the second paragraph, it was late last night. And I think it was Teresa and maybe a couple others. We just wanted to check that wording.
The board, which one is it? Read it.
Yeah, the board also noted a potential negative social impact. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Sentence there, right? So, we
Can
talked
you make
about.
that bigger, because your version is different than mine.
I will zoom in.
Thank you.
Yeah, we
Is
read
that better?
that. I did have a problem with that.
Thank you.
So I think that was the item, maybe we weren't, the board wasn't 100% comfortable with. And that's what I had in my notes, that was just one to check tonight.
I recall, Laura, you didn't like you didn't want to include that language and a potential positive social impact from providing additional connectivity. Do you want us to strike that, or what do you want us to do?
Did you say that again, Larry?
So the sentence reads, the board also noted a potential negative social impact from placing the project on low-income senior housing and a potential positive social impact from providing additional connectivity.
Well, can we get rid of the and?
It's our document. We can do whatever we want to.
Yeah, let's just get rid of the and, because, you know, because the truth of the matter that is a negative social impact, and that's it.
I think we lose nothing by taking it out, personally.
Yes, let's take it out. I mean, I know.
Should we vote, Steve?
Take it out.
Well, look, I mean, I'm the one that mentioned that concept because we were prompted to think about, you know,
Other, yeah.
impacts. You know, I think that is a potential positive impact from it, is additional connectivity, and that's my opinion on it. I mean, I'm happy to run down if people want to vote on it.
Well, can I make a suggestion? The project on low-income senior housing, period.
Right.
Some board members consider that there is a potential positive social impact from providing additional connectivity. So this way, it's not an either or.
Or
Not
is it joined
negating
together?
the low-income impact by upping the positive social impact. Just put them two different sentences.
How I'm reading this is that you're saying, oh, well, it may have a low social negative impact, a negative social impact, but
That's okay.
but for the service that it's providing, who cares? And I apologize if that seems to be rough, but that's how I read it.
Yep.
Okay. And I'm sure that there are others that will see it the same way.
I think Laura's suggestion is a good one. So full stop after senior housing. Additional comments noted, a potential positive social impact from.
Yeah, make it its own paragraphs.
Yeah, the potential positive social impacts will be from providing additional connectivity. So it gives the pros and the
And maybe change that word additional to enhanced or improved.
Does that reflect the board's consensus?
Yes, this one's on consensus.
Like, was there anything else from part 2 that we need to review, or we covered everything?
I believe we covered everything.
If that's the case, I'm going to suggest we move on to the resolution.
We need to, do we need like a motion to adopt this, or are we going to do that all at once with the?
That would be part of the resolution.
Okay.
I'm just pulling that up as well.
And this is version 4, not reviewed at meeting.
Yes.
I like to look at it myself.
Yeah, I'm about to pull it up.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at today, all day.
Are you seeing the resolution?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Now, I wasn't at your meeting last night. Did you have a particular MO for going through the resolution or the determination?
Should we go ahead and read this through? Would that be helpful to the board?
Yes, I think so.
All right.
Yeah, I think so.
Should I do this, Patrick? Do you want to read it? What do you think?
Whatever you're more comfortable with.
All right, I can read. All right, so resolution to grant site plan and special use permit approval, 119 Columbia Street, Verizon Wireless. Whereas the applicant, Bell Atlantic Mobile, we have a missing E there on mobile systems. DBA Verizon Wireless, the applicant has applied for special use permit and site plan approval to install 6 roof-mounted antennas and related equipment. The project on property located at 119 Columbia Street in the city of Hudson in the general commercial zoning district, the property. And whereas the project is depicted on a site plan prepared by Tectonic entitled Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems LLC, DBA Verizon Wireless, dated 2/24/2021, 2020, last revised June 4th, 2021, and described in supplemental submissions to the planning board, a list of which is included in Schedule A of this resolution, collectively the site plans and set. And whereas pursuant to section 284-6 of the city code, no telecommunications facility may be established without approval of a special use permit defined as the official document or permit by which an applicant is allowed to file for a building permit to construct and use wireless telecommunications facilities as granted or issued by the city. And whereas the proposed location of the facility is on an existing structure in the city, which is the second highest priority location as set forth in section 284-9 of the city code. And whereas the applicant has submitted a full environmental assessment form dated July 17th, 2020. And whereas on January 12th, 2021, the planning board classified the action as an unlisted action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act and declared itself lead agency as there were no other involved agencies. And whereas the project site is located,
My apologies.
a
Got
little
a
bit.
little overzealous.
There you go. Yeah, located 1 block from the Warren Street Historic District, a locally designated historic district, and adjacent to the Hudson Historic District, which is listed on the state and national registers of historic places. Whereas by email dated August 20th, 2020, the Office of Parks and Recreation and Historic Preservation issued its determination that the project would have no adverse visual effect on historic properties. And whereas during the March 9th, 2021 meeting, a representative from Arbor Management, owner of the subject building, indicated that Arbor Management would limit the lease space on the building to 1 carrier, Verizon, as it has done on other buildings which it owns in other locales. And whereas the planning board has considered visual simulations prepared by both the applicant and those opposed to the project. You scroll down. And whereas the planning board has considered over 20 potential alternate project locations as set forth in the alternate site summary planning board input prepared by HDR as part of its June 16th, 2021 supplemental technical memorandum on file with the planning board. And whereas a duly noticed public hearing was opened on October 27th, 2020 and closed on June 8th, 2021, during which all those who wish to speak were heard. And whereas said public hearing was held remotely in accordance with Executive Order 202.1 and subsequent orders due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas written public comments on the project were accepted during the application review and until June 18th, 2021, 10 days after the close of the public hearing, including the comments listed in Schedule B of this resolution. And whereas the planning board has reviewed parts 1, 2, and 3 of the EAF and all available information concerning the potential impacts of the project and found that the planning board has sufficient information on which to base a determination of significance. And whereas the planning board has considered the criteria contained in 6 NYCRR 617.7 and thoroughly analyzed all identified relevant areas of environmental concern. Now, therefore, be it resolved that for the reasons set forth in the attached EAF parts 1, 2, and 3, and the notice of determination of significance, the planning board hereby determines that the project as proposed will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts and that a draft environmental impact statement will not be prepared. Be it further resolved that the planning board hereby finds that the standards for a special use permit for a telecommunications facility for the project have been met, including but not limited to the following. 1, the applicant has demonstrated that there is a signal capacity and coverage issue within the city of Hudson and that the project will remedy the gap. 2, the project has been sited on the highest available priority location as set forth in section 284-9 of the city code and is consistent with the city's zoning regulations, a publicly owned structure which has a higher priority under city code. It is not,
Yeah, there's a
it's
typo
not
there.
available for lease as the structure is proposed for demolition.
Yeah, sorry, that I think there was a track changes issue there, but
Okay,
you should say which is not available, yeah.
which is not available for lease as the structure is proposed for demolition. The planning board has reviewed alternate sites and has determined that the proposed project site is the best available option. The alternate sites would provide inferior service and leave service gaps, particularly for the high band 2100 megahertz frequency when compared to the proposed project site.
Can I interject, Steve? I had a
Yeah.
question about the wording of that one in terms of the board making the determination it was the best site. I mean, the applicant presented I mean, I think it's taking a proactive position on what the board has done. The board has agreed to accept the site, or if, you know, as we proceed to voting, but it seems like there's some language there that could be massaged to make it more accurate.
Sure, we can change it to say the planning board has reviewed alternate site and agrees with the applicant's determination, or does not disagree with the applicant's determination.
I would, my thought is, I wish that we could pin the applicant down to have said that they pursued no other alternatives. We were the ones who did it. And then they approved it. We don't have the knowledge to know what's best. They do. And they looked at Bliss Towers and they looked at Providence Hall. That was it. So, and then they commented on our recommendations, which we really don't have the, you know, the technical knowledge to, you know, it's an assumption that a building might be better, but, you know, I would think they would be better. That's just my own thing, you know.
Why can't we say the planning board has reviewed alternate sites and accepts the designation that the project site is the best available location?
Okay.
But that's my point. Compared to what? You know, it was our alternative sites. They looked at no other alternative sites that they were willing to confess to.
Well, Mike Musso, can Mike speak to this? Is he on? Sorry for joining late, everyone. Hi.
I mean, I don't mean to be a bug about this, but, you know, that's
No, we should be accurate in our wording, but I think they did look at some sites and then we asked them to look at additional sites, but it was all at your request.
Yep. So, so just maybe put some dialogue around that. Initially in the application materials, so this would have been from the fall 2020. Just want to get this right. We did write up alternate sites that the applicant had looked for. Okay, so let me just go to this real quick. Alternate
Do
site.
you want me to stop sharing, Larry? I mean, Mike?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Do you want me to stop sharing?
No, maybe not. I could just read up here. I know you have this on the screen. They of course looked at Bliss, but that went away. 3 additional locations were identified by the applicant to look at. So those were 325 Columbia Street and the Dock Street properties and the Water Street properties. So that was the applicant looking at the code, looking at maybe a priority 1 site, right? City-owned site on an existing building. So they had come through with those 3. And then that evolved from there, John. I think it started with you, frankly, with the Verizon building on Union,
Right.
Barney and Son Tees, and then in March, a bigger list. So the applicant did come in and look at alternatives initially without being prompted for them.
That's not entirely accurate. In the pre-application,
Narrow focus, a very narrow focus.
yeah, and in fact, in the pre-application meeting, our very first session with Scott Olson on March 19th of May 19th, 2020, we asked him to describe for us the selection criteria and to give us a rundown of alternate sites that they had reviewed and how they determined that Providence Hall was the optimal site. It took us until the tech memo of April of this year to get that information from the applicant. So I think the wording here is really critical, and that, you know, we are here right now because our shot clock is over. And I believe our shot clock is over because this applicant has consistently failed to provide the information that this board and the public has asked for. And, you know, I'm a little frustrated, but I think, you know, I think if we find wording that is nuanced here, we can properly describe the dynamic that took place. I mean, you know, we could also say has reviewed alternate sites and accepts the applicant's definition of the proposed project site is the least problematic location, rather than the best available.
If I may, this is Allison, the attorney representing Verizon. Mike goes into great detail in his technical memorandum about the over 20 sites, the alternative sites that were evaluated. And I think the language in Mike's technical memo concluded that an analysis of those alternative locations concludes that, this was the only available location to provide the service to fill the gap in coverage that's needed at this location. I mean, maybe the board could consider taking the language from Mike Musso's memo.
Well, some of that is from my memo, but I think what the board is looking at is where was the genesis of these alternates, right? That's what we're looking at.
From us, they weren't from Verizon.
Yeah, I just looking at the language in the resolution, it doesn't really speak to the process of getting to the conclusion. It's just, the conclusion of what that analysis has come to.
Yeah, okay, so board, what would we like to do? Because this is our decision, so. And these choices, these potential other choices were from us, not Verizon. So, Larry, you're pretty good at this. How can we phrase this to make it an honest statement?
Well, the only problem I really have is this notion that is the best available location. I mean, I don't know.
The most viable in the time.
Oh yeah, how about that? I'm okay with that. Is the most viable location
that we were able to determine. The fact is, we got the matrix only just recently, though. I think that it's where we are now.
Yeah, that seems to get at it.
Could I suggest you in the first sentence a suggestion for adding the planning board has identified and reviewed?
Yep.
Well, identified. Yeah, I guess, and we reviewed them. Yeah. I don't know.
Oh, we did.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
I might add the proposed site best meets the applicant's defined goals.
The applicant's desires,
Yeah, defined goals for citing.
Well, I think that second sentence addresses that. The alternate sites would provide inferior service and leave service gaps when compared to the proposed project site.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Mike, didn't you say that the high band frequency was inferior even at the proposed site?
No, this statement is, I think, about alternates. So it's looking at all the universe of alternate sites that were assessed versus the proposed site.
So you're saying it was inferior at the alternate sites, but at the proposed site, there's no inferiority, it's perfect?
Right, when compared to the proposed site.
I thought when you and I had a conversation, I had asked you, what are the cons? And you said inferior high band frequency was one of the cons.
No, I think I was talking about the sentence here with alternate sites.
Okay.
Well, I mean, another way to resolve this is to put that clause, when compared to the proposed project site, comma, the alternate sites would provide inferior service and the service gap for the high band, right? I mean, just put that at the beginning and then it flows more rationally.
Okay. That sounds good.
Since we stopped, can we just go back to now, therefore, be it resolved, the paragraph just above?
Mm-hmm.
And just, taking off from what we did on the notice of determination of significance, could we put, so it's the first sentence, the second sentence, then it says, the planning board hereby determines that the project as proposed will, and could we add according to current FCC rules, or whatever the right way to say that is?
Where is that? Where do you want that?
Where?
Okay,
Very top, yep.
Top?
now
I mean, this is boilerplate language, Laura, that just adopts the neg deck and it references back to that document that we prepared. I mean, I can put it in, but this,
we put it in this, Victoria, I think while you weren't here.
right, I have a copy of that now. And so this, as it's drafted, incorporates everything that you added there.
All right, because that's EAF part 3.
Yeah, and the notice of determination of significance. So that document is incorporated by reference right here. So I hesitate to just incorporate one piece of it because I really want, because then it questions why didn't we incorporate everything? I'd rather just keep this reference to it, and then that document is entirely incorporated into this package.
Whatever.
No, I understand what you're getting at. It's just I would want to add all of this.
I just don't know how accurate one needs to be, but we don't need to be. So that's fine. Just keep going.
You need to be accurate. I want to.
I mean, I guess I mean consistent, Victoria. We said it over here. It seems as though it should be said over here, but for the sake of time, it's fine. Leave it, and there's more important things to deal with. So.
Okay, but I don't want to leave it. This is an important piece of the process, which is that everything that's in that document is the reference for this statement. And so I just want you to understand it. There's not an inconsistency.
Yes, I don't understand that, but I don't want to take the time. I'll email you and you can explain it to me privately.
Okay. Well, we'll have that conversation because it'll be important for other projects moving forward as well. I want everyone to, be comfortable with the process.
I have an issue with most viable in that there may be other sites that are viable and perhaps maybe more viable based on some people's interpretation. What we want to say here is that it's meeting Verizon's defined goals.
Can we just say best? How about we just take this out and leave it like that?
Okay.
I do have something else. I thought we were going to read the whole thing and then come back. So since we're not doing that, let's go back to whereas a duly noticed public hearing was open October 27, 2020 and closed on June 8, 2021. Then it says during which all those who wish to speak were heard.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I just want to change that because we don't know that. Which provided ample time for public and community input, because we don't know if all who wish to speak were heard. It provided ample time for whoever people to try and come and be a part of this.
Okay. So what this sentence is supposed to be getting at is that anyone who showed up at the hearing was given the opportunity to speak, but there may have been more who were desirous.
You see the difference here? Now I read this and I interpret that reading differently. For 40 years, I worked in a place where every rule came out in writing and every place was doing it differently. So it is in the reading. So just, that we provided ample time for everyone and not be so direct and and conclusive. Thank you.
Something like that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Teresa. Yeah, and maybe Teresa, actually, to your point about just the process, maybe we should finish reading through it and everyone can take notes on.
Yeah, I thought we were doing.
Because I think also just hearing it in its entirety is going to be helpful as well. So maybe let me just pick up. We were at the planning board has identified and reviewed alternate sites. When compared to the proposed project site, the alternate sites would provide inferior service and leave service gaps, particularly for the high band 2100 megahertz frequency. Can you scroll down? The project incorporates stealth technology to minimize adverse aesthetic and visual impacts on the land, property, buildings, and other facilities adjacent to, surrounding, and let's change that to, in general, the same area as the proposed project site. The project site is the most appropriate site as regards to being the least visually intrusive among those available in the city. The planning board acknowledges that the project may be visible from a number of surrounding properties, but finds that visibility in and of itself is not a significant adverse impact. The project has incorporated stealthing so that the proposed antennas, thank you, and equipment will be located behind a fiberglass structure, take out the S, painted or treated to look like an extension of the brick building. Be it further resolved that the planning board hereby grants site plan approval and special use permit approval for the project as shown and described in the site plan set, and authorizes the chairperson or is authorized designee to initial each page of the site plan set after compliance with the following conditions and per the recommendations set forth in the city's consultant HDR technical memo or memoranda of March 3rd and June 16th, 2021. Okay, so here's the list of our conditions. 1, payment of all fees in escrow. 2, approval by the planning board attorney of a deed restriction for the property committing to not letting other wireless providers locate on the 119 Columbia Street property for a period of 20 years from the date of approval. 3, revision of the site plan set sheet C2 to include the following note. The applicant shall return to the planning board for approval of any modification of the facility pursuant to section 284-5A of the city code, including but not limited to a modification which changes the height of any element of the approved facility or which changes the service from 4G to 5G, except that like for like antenna replacement, which does not alter the service height or visibility of the facility, shall be permitted without planning board approval. A building permit will be required in all cases where modification to the approved facility is proposed. Revision of the site plan set to include a note restricting the use of the building by additional carriers without approval by the planning board. And sorry, that's number 4. Number 5, submission to the code enforcement. Oh, sorry.
All right, went too far. There we go.
Number 5, submission to the code enforcement office of a final plan for stealthing, including exact materials, colors, dimensions, and dimensional load, and physical samples of the stealthing material designed to blend with the actual brick appearance of the building, to be approved by a planning board member, Larry Bone, a registered architect, or another registered architect hired by the planning board and the code enforcement officer. Submission, number 6, submission for review of qualifications of the applicant's selected stealth vendor, the vendor's experience with stealthing / color matching at other rooftop wireless sites, along with photo examples from other projects. Number 7, submission of a rooftop access protocol to the approval of the planning board's consulting engineer, to include protocols for rooftop access for persons not trained in RF emissions, such as maintenance workers that may need to work on the rooftop in proximity to the antennas. All right, and then number 8, certificates of insurance naming the city as an additional insured, meeting the requirements of section 284-23 of the city code and including pollution liability coverage. Be it further resolved that the project must comply with the following ongoing conditions of the special use permit. 1, compliance with all requirements for a FCC controlled exposure environment and the rooftop access protocols, submission of an annual RF emissions compliance report that the operations are in compliance with FCC regulations, that signage and barriers are maintained, and that the rooftop complies as an FCC controlled exposure environment. 3, a structural / safety compliance report shall be submitted. The periodic report should include a statement by a New York State PE that the structural integrity of the building rooftop, antenna mounts, rooftop equipment platform, and stealth enclosures are in accordance with the approved site plan and meet the applicable city and state codes, and that the stealth enclosures / other conditions are maintained in accordance with the planning board's approvals. Wireless code sections, including but not limited to section 248-8.t should be followed. The scope design criteria examples, wind, ice assumptions, and schedule, examples, 3-year reporting interval of the structural / safety compliance report will be established during the building permit phase of the project. Number 4, all operations shall be maintained in accordance with the chapter 284 of the city code and all other applicable local, state, and federal requirements. Number 5, maintenance of liability insurance is required by section 284-23A, including pollution liability. Updated certificates naming the city as an additional insured party shall be provided annually. All right, let's scroll up. Be it further, sorry, there we go. Be it further resolved that prior to issuance of a building permit for the project by the building inspector or code enforcement official, the applicant shall satisfy the following conditions. 1, approval by the building inspector or code enforcement official of the final structural analysis and confirmation of the design criteria used by Verizon's engineer. The scope and schedule of the periodic structural / safety compliance report will be established at this time. 2, a pre-construction meeting with building department representatives, Verizon representatives, and property owner representatives to discuss construction procedures, stealthing requirements, color matching with the building's brick appearance, conformance with the stealth screens depicted in the photo simulations, and all planning board conditions. 3, submission to the code enforcement official describing the schedule, logistics, equipment needed, such as a crane, number of work days, and city requirements, as in work hours, other local approvals for construction, third-party inspections if required, associated with facility construction. All right. Number 4, proof of recordation of the approved deed restriction. 5, submission of an inspection and maintenance plan, which includes an annual inspection and response plan should the stealth screening materials become damaged or faded by wind or weather. 6, approval by the building inspector or code enforcement official of the scope of the annual RF emissions compliance report, contains checklists and photos, and schedule. Be it further resolved that prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy or certificate of compliance for the project, the applicant shall satisfy the following conditions. 1, submission of as-built drawings of the project that includes documentation / survey of actual equipment, location, and height, including stealth screening, actual centerline height of Verizon antennas, location of utility connections associated with the new facility, documentation that antennas and all other equipment is properly grounded and in compliance with all applicable fire and electrical codes, and documentation that all necessary permits for work and third-party inspections as required by the city have been obtained and complied with. All right, and that is the resolution.
So I had a comment from the applicant while we get started. They asked that, Mike, maybe you can help explain the purpose for this. But they asked that where it discusses 5G, that we say 5G wavelength or millimeter wave, and to specify that we're talking about a particular output from the antenna.
What?
I would keep it as 5G, and you can add a parentheses, e.g. MM wave, millimeter wave, comma, new radio, or any other 5G service.
Okay. Thank you.
What does that say?
Yeah, a comma after millimeter wave.
Oh, okay.
And I guess periods for EG.
Yeah.
Okay, so board, what notes did you make as we went through this for things that you wanted?
If I could just, I'm sorry to interrupt, Chairman, but just going back to this condition, concern in an email to Victoria today, because more and more this term 5G is being used loosely to refer to not only the actual millimeter wavelength that we've been talking about, which is the high frequency bandwidth that's involved in 5G, but also it's being used more and more frequently by carriers as a marketing, a way to market, new products. The concern here is that even though Verizon, is not utilizing this facility for 5G, it could come up, if someone has their phone, I don't know if you've seen it in areas that already aren't served by 5G, it can come up saying 5G. And that's just because of the designation that's been put on, by the, carrier, which may not even be Verizon. But it doesn't mean that the facility is actually being utilized by this 5G millimeter wavelength. So it really just, it's to provide clarity and to avoid any confusion if it comes to, someone seeing this on their phone and not understanding that it doesn't really mean true 5G wavelength. It's a way for us to, distinguish that, that wouldn't be a basis for anyone to enforce or to claim that Verizon's not acting within the requirements of its permit. And I think, what we had suggested would just, it's really just a minor change. That would be service from 4G to 5G millimeter wavelength frequency. I think that, or any other, 5G service is what introduces the ambiguity, because it could be marketed as a 5G, service, but not actually utilizing the 5G millimeter frequency.
I didn't know the public was going to be reading this. I don't understand it. I think that if this is what our consultant and attorney feel is correct, I think it should stay this way.
Well, the permit's a public document. It'll be available to anyone.
Right. Well, all
The way I look at it, if somebody, I have on my phone, I used to have a phone, and I think what Allison's getting at, I do have a phone. My old phone would actually light up 5GE. So I'd say, oh, wow, I have 5G service. No, I don't have 5G service. I'm using some of the advanced 5th generation tools and apps that happen to appear on my phone. Look, if anyone has a question about this, if someone says, oh my goodness, my phone tells me I'm using 5G, they would go to the code enforcement officer, right? And I think all this would be,
Yes.
The reports, the requirements would all be able to be vetted at that time. I think there's going to be confusion in this whole transition to it, but there's been enough dialogue on this application that, I would want to leave it as it's shown now. And we'll get over it. The code enforcement office, if they get a number of complaints, they'll handle and process them. And if they know with your compliance reports and with the structural safety report, they'll be updated on what, if any, changes have happened. So I think it's all right with this. I do appreciate the applicant's point, but I think it's just going to be such a gray transition area into 5G. No one, including the applicant reps on the phone tonight, know exactly how that's going to look. That's my 2 cents.
But just so I understand what we're talking about, when we say 5G, we're talking about this millimeter wave, the size of the wavelength going out, right?
It's based on a higher frequency.
Okay.
And that's the concern that the public generally has, or that some people studying this have looked at. Here, it's not founded in the US, as you know. We've heard from the public that it is being challenged, especially in light of small cells. There could be a court ruling or determination that comes out later this year. I believe whatever happens, the annual RF emissions compliance report, that scope will cover the city. Because I do ask for any updates in the criteria that are used. But there's 5G millimeter wave or higher frequency. There's also 5G new radio, which is operating at very similar frequencies to the high band. It's not much above the 2100 megahertz that you've seen in this, or the 2400 megahertz. So where exactly that is, it's just semantics in a big way between technical people that say, no, 5G is the much higher frequencies, or the public that might say, oh, I'm using 5G now, it's here. So it is confusing. We have confirmation that what's being used now is 4G. So if there's any changes to that, there'll be a process in place that will that will make the code enforcement office aware.
So if I add the word frequency after 5G, any other 5G frequency service, that makes it clear that we're talking about frequency, right? Is that an okay clarification? And not advertising or anything else?
Is that
And
meaning, Mike?
was that
Yeah,
right?
I would just keep it at service.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't feel comfortable. I don't think anyone feels comfortable to say if using the word frequency is going to appropriately blanket and protect the city.
We
I just
can't
don't
take into
have that
consideration how other people's equipment is going to translate the signal. Right?
Right.
Right.
So,
And the point of this paragraph is that if they change the capacity of the equipment, we need to
Right.
know about it. And
Right.
that's quite clear. In
that's pretty clear, yeah.
the intent is clear. Can you make like for like hyphenated?
Hmm?
I had a question about the like for like. So that means if in the 4G realm, okay, take away any opportunity for 5G, but if in the 4G realm,
Mhm.
Verizon, because I think that they did that on the hospital, they had to, better their equipment up there.
Exactly.
So when we say like for like, does that mean that the if they replace an antenna, it has to be exactly the same? And I'm going to say frequency, if that's the correct word, or can they within the 4G realm, make it better, more?
It says it does not alter service, height, or visibility. So
It has to be the same thing.
Basically, that's right.
Can I just say something? Rick Suhaki has, he's not okay with this language, and I think we need to let him explain.
Who's Rick Silvati? Rick?
Rick Suhaki is our RF engineer. We need to let him speak if that's okay.
Go ahead, Rick.
All right. Hey, how are you? So yeah, Mike, which I know you're aware of this as well, and we actually did discuss this a couple of months ago when we had our special meeting where we kind of broke down the frequencies and broke down the whole process of getting the sites. So we have 850 5G right now, and that's going over 850 megahertz. So what comes out of that antenna? Again, Mike, I know you understand this, but to kind of make sure everybody else does. So it's literally the same frequency as 4G, but it's designated 5G because of the equipment behind it. Basically what happens to our switch and everything, it doesn't affect health in any way. It doesn't affect anything else any other way. It's the same frequency. So really 5G millimeter wave, like they were saying, is the only difference to 5G. So if it says anything other than 5G millimeter wave, it's essentially restricting what we can do to the site at all.
Yes.
Millimeter wave is certainly very important. Could we put something in there about the frequencies that were approved for this application? The frequency ranges
Right,
from...
because 850 is in the application already.
It is 700, 850, 1900, and 2100. So if those frequency ranges cannot change, that's the point of this.
That would make more sense if you can put, maybe like you're saying, word it as to frequencies outside of this application. Then that would make more sense.
do you want to put them in here?
I'm so confused and I so don't trust this. I do not remember ever hearing in a workshop meeting anything about 5G other than it won't be 5G. Now all of a sudden it looks like we are now into the 5G realm, only with some interesting and clever wording. I don't get this, Mike. You would have thought of this, Mike. Well, why now is this being done?
Rick, do you want to start?
Explain?
Answer that?
I'd like Mike to answer it.
Okay.
I understand you better.
Well, I thank you, Laura.
Uh-huh.
As I explained a minute ago about semantics and what people call 5G and what people don't call 5G. The operating range of what's approved now, right? There were 4 frequencies. You looked at all those coverage maps, 700 megahertz all the way up to 2100 megahertz. So there is equipment called 5G. Rick, as an industry person, that's Rick, who uses 5G at these frequencies that we've already looked at? Who uses the term 5G?
As far as what carriers?
No, who in the industry or who in the public would call something 5G at the frequencies that we've looked at and approved here?
So, and basically, again, like you were showing on your phone earlier, how it said 5G. So essentially on the 850 megahertz band, we've already released technology that uses the 850. It's called 5G. Again, it doesn't change anything out of the antennas. What it is the equipment behind it is faster. So basically, once it gets to the cell site, it goes through fiber, different equipment, different switching equipment, and it makes it faster, and it works at 5G quote unquote speeds. It is not 5G millimeter wave. It's nowhere near as fast as millimeter wave either. But it doesn't
So
put
Verizon
out
is
any
using
different frequency.
Verizon is calling it 5G to I guess sell more phones, to say 5G is here. But it's the exact same frequencies as we've looked at ad nauseum for this application.
So
Correct.
I'm not trusting this, but if that's so, that needs to be said, except that it's the exact same frequency as whatever the phrase would be.
Look, I would agree with Laura on that.
It is
And
the
it's
same
important,
frequency.
and it's important to call out millimeter wave, because that is not here right now. It could be here. It is in some parts in the country where there's frequencies much higher than what were presented or reviewed for this application. All right, above the 2100 megahertz we looked at here. So I think that is what the basis of this condition is looking at those much higher. It's a jump in technology and the frequency ranges that would be out there. I think we could clarify it. And yeah, I apologize, it's so confusing, but I think part of that is the industry and the carriers. They want to roll out that 5G is here. So
Wait a minute, so they're lying? So it's really
they're not lying. It's just what
calling it 5G?
they might be marketing it as 5G at some point, but it's not 5G in what the public concerns are about with frequency bands that we have not seen before. Those are called millimeter wave, higher frequencies, and they operate differently than what we've reviewed for this application.
Mike, are you comfortable with the gray language that Victoria has put in here? Millimeter wave with no changes to approved frequency ranges?
I am.
You don't want to be more specific, and like you said, it's the 750, 2100.
We could say that frequency ranges, i.e. 700 to 2100 megahertz.
I think we should. I mean, we're being so direct with everything else. Why not this?
We could do that.
Okay, I think that clarifies it. So
yes, please make it very clear that.
Oh, we're getting screwed. Let's move on.
And understand.
Okay, if everyone's comfortable with this language, it's already 6:10. I know we're on a time frame, and I have an attorney-client issue I do want to talk to you about before you vote. So
you don't have to put EG. For example.
Well, I had some other. Is that me? Am I hearing background noise? Am I the only one?
I'm hearing it.
You're not
hearing it.
Okay, but there are a couple of other things.
I just, if we're done with this topic, I just.
This topic. Okay.
Okay, I'm afraid I wouldn't mind just quickly going back to the top and just skimming over each of the things. There's some minor typos and some wording things, and I think we can do it quickly, but I think we should do it.
some things that are not so quick. So
Laura, maybe we should go with yours before we do a sort of.
that'd be nice. Victoria, sorry, the condition two, approval by the planning board attorney of a deed restriction for the property, et cetera. That, you know, other wireless providers won't locate there. And that relates back to, I guess, the comment, the whereas, you know, they're not numbered, but the whereas that says Arbor Management indicated that Arbor Management would limit the carriers permitted to lease the space on the building, Verizon only. Well, I just want to say that indicated, I don't know, that to me is not a particularly strong word, but then you know, put in the deed restriction. So I'm just wondering, without a sign, does this mean that there's no signed agreement / deed restriction signed by Arbor? But rather this deed restriction is signed by Verizon, who doesn't own the building?
No, a deed restriction always has to be signed by the property owner.
Okay, the property owners said they would do that?
This is what I would like to talk to you about in an attorney-client session.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, this is the question. So we can do it now, or we can do it at the end.
But we can't really vote on this resolution without knowing that, right?
Correct. So, correct.
We can do it in attorney-client if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do it now.
Can you move us into a breakout room?
Not here.
Yeah, into a breakout room.
Yes.
Bye, everyone. We'll be back.
I'm good.
We can.
Victoria, are we allowed to have Mike with us in our breakout room, or how does that work?
Mike can come.
Yeah, but
it's a legal issue. I don't think we need him on this.
Okay.
Thank you. Do I have to press join?
No.
I see something say.
I'll move you into it. Yeah, press join. Press join.
Press join?
Where? Oh, okay.
Did I miss anybody that belongs in there?
Where is join?
John Cody. All right.
I don't see
Do you
join.
see it now?
Ah, okay.
Anybody else?
right, are we all back here?
One. Yep.
All right. Where are we on?
Oh, let me pull up the rest of this shit. Okay. So we were going to go back up. Let's just go through everything quickly. So okay, 1. Steve, you can lead the discussion if you want, but let's just make
So
sure.
sorry, we're going to review the each condition. Is that this is?
Yeah, well, we never got through these other findings, 4 and 5. So I just want to make sure there's no changes to those before we move on to the conditions.
I had a question about 5, a comment about 5. I think that first sentence should just be removed. The project site is most appropriate site as regards to being the least visually intrusive among the available in the city. I don't think that's accurate because we haven't looked at all the other ones visually. So the planning board acknowledges, yada, yada, that seems okay. But I think that first sentence is just inaccurate.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Clark. On 4, then the project incorporates stealth technology to minimize adverse aesthetic and visual impacts on the land, property, buildings, and other facilities adjacent to, surrounding, and in general, the same area as the proposed project site. Does that work? Or do we have any anything else on that one?
Where are we? I'm sorry.
Right here.
Where? Oh, God, thank you.
Should it, in other facilities adjacent to, and
It's just mimicking some of the language in the code.
yeah, I see, yeah. Yep.
Okay, so moving down then. Payment of all fees and escrow seems straightforward, right? Approval by the planning board attorney of a deed restriction for the property, committing to not letting other wireless providers locate on the 119 Columbia Street property for a period of 20 years from the date of approval. Anything on this?
Well, you know, for me, this is an imperative condition. We worked a lot to navigate through the public commentary and the concerns about the neighbors who live in an historic district, the public who is coming to Hudson because this is a town rich in architecture from the 17th, 18th, 19th, and even 20th centuries. And the aesthetic impacts of this installation, I think, are as successfully mitigated as we can do. Having the A and B, the alpha and beta sectors on the roof of the penthouse, having the gamma sector on the opposite symmetrically balanced corner of the building is a way, for me anyway, to understand that this these mitigations absolutely come as close as we can get to minimizing the negative impact aesthetically and visually in the neighborhood. And we're going to lose that if we start adding other facilities or other antennae on the roof of this. And you know, it seems to me that we're already up against 2 historic districts, and we've already heard from many citizens about their concerns about how this thing looks. We've done the best that we can. I would hate to lose that by adding additional components on the roof of this building. It's a long, skinny building. No matter what you do on the roof, at least on the perimeter, is going to be visible from the street. I think this is as good as it gets, as far as I'm concerned, and I would hate to lose that.
And I think Mike Musa had concerns about the roof being able to handle that, and especially with the narrowness of the building.
Also, it seems to me that when we had the representative from Arbor Management at one of our public hearings, they indicated quite clearly that on other buildings that they have, they don't co-locate, right? That they have an agreement with one provider, and that's something they normally do. So it doesn't seem to be a particularly onerous requirement, especially since Barbara gave us the idea, right? Like,
That's true.
I wanted to comment as well. I mean, really from the beginning of this process, that was a key concern, the aesthetics of the roof. Again, I think the stealth screening was a significant effort by the applicant to meet our requests and our demands, reflecting community concern. And I just think that additional towers on that site really are grossly inappropriate and would be in violation of largely what the community has said and what this board has really stressed from day one.
Chairman, if I could address the board on this issue.
Sorry, Ms. Phillips, we're actually up against a really tight timeline here. We don't have time to recognize you right now. So we're going to finish our review of this before the vote. But I did want to just echo what my fellow board members said. I mean, I think that the rationale for this is it's essential to protecting the aesthetic resources of this, historic district that's adjacent to. And I think it's one of the most essential restrictions we can place on this permit. So let's continue on then. What do we want to go through the rest of these?
Well, we did item 3. I think we need to look at 4 and 5. I have a concern about 5. I don't think we need to name any particular architect. I think we can just say to be approved by a registered architect designated by the planning board.
Perfect.
And hold on. Maybe we can hedge it a little bit. Designed as far as practicable, or as reasonably designed, or designed to reasonably blend, right? I mean, like, architects can be, well, difficult. So I think that as long as it's
is it blending?
I have a question about this.
As much as
Is somebody talking? Could I make a comment?
Go ahead, Laura.
Okay, sorry. Okay, good. I'm hearing stuff. Yeah, I just, oh, thank you. That was going to be, do we need the code enforcer to, thank you.
No.
That was it. Okay.
He's going to review it structurally. So
Yeah.
submission.
Okay. That was my comment, so thanks.
To,
All right.
to be approved by registered architect and the planning board.
in an attempt to blend or something. Okay, that's fine.
It's a little awkward, but I think we get it.
Looks good.
Okay, on number 6, do we need to put vendor and then parenthesis S, because there could be a supplier for the fiberglass, there could be a supplier for the attachments. I mean, there might be more than one party involved in that.
Okay.
Does that fix it, Larry?
We can just keep
Yeah.
it. Oh, fine. Okay, rooftop access protocol, that condition is from the memo from your engineer.
Does that mean that if they fix anything?
It means they would adopt a program, so possibly signage and notification. So if there's a leak on the roof or someone needs to go check something out, there would be an approved protocol that needs to be followed. And so Mike would review the protocol to make sure it's adequate, and then hopefully they would comply with it so that the routine maintenance worker knows what they're doing when they go up on the roof.
Now, would that protocol be available to the public?
Yes.
Once it's
submitted. Yes, it would be submitted as part of the application, and so it would be subject to public review.
Okay.
So this one we need to make as an additional assured. So this should say for including a separate, there we go.
Victoria, do we have to say the name of the city? No, just when we say city, it's just already taken as Hudson.
City of
We're at the
Hudson.
top.
I assume I named the city somewhere up top as city.
Yeah, I think it's on the very first sentence.
I can go back and define it, and I can.
Oh, I just didn't know.
Yeah, I'll clean that up. I'll go back and I'll make little typographical edits once we're done.
Do you need to say general liability insurance there, Victoria? You do the separate pollution policy, but
okay, here we go. We can say it. So 284-23.
Oh, says that. I see.
Requires general. So how about we say including, but not limited to, general liability. And there we go.
Okay.
Because there's other requirements as well, but there we go. These are the reports. Anyone have any questions or comments on these?
I had a comment about signage and barriers are maintained. My sense is there should be some language qualifying that so they're maintained to retain the original look. I mean, you can imagine the fiberglass panels fading, getting broken, whatever, and it seems like they should be maintained.
Well, that's signage and barriers. I think there's another one.
Yeah, it's down. That appears elsewhere.
There's
Okay,
some-
The stealth thing is totally separate from the health and safety signage and barriers.
Got it. Okay, that's fine. I guess I jumped the gun there. I knew it was somewhere.
And then why don't we just say maintenance of the required insurance? This way we're not saying anything differently. So this references back identified in site plan condition.
On number 3, when you say the periodic report, what time period is that?
Down below.
Here, I'm sorry, this is
Number
3. Okay, so this is an ongoing condition of the special use permit. So it says a structural safety compliance report shall be submitted. Is that an annual report, Mike?
We had suggested 3-year.
Can you
And
put that in there?
that's based on other municipalities that have a 5-year renewal process. That's not in the code here in Hudson. However, in this number 3 item, the schedule would be confirmed by the code enforcement officer. For example, 3-year, and that I think would be appropriate.
So this 3 says requiring them to propose something with the code enforcement officer, some kind of inspection and compliance schedule. And so whatever they decide on would then be followed.
Okay, so the periodic means 3-year. Okay, gotcha.
Can we make a couple of minor changes here? Can we actually write out professional engineer in the first sentence of number 3, and then because not everyone knows what a PE is, and then And then down below, so in construction, schedule refers to a list of components that go into a project, like you have a lighting schedule or paint schedule, a hardware schedule. So the word schedule referring to time is confusing. We should change that to, I think, timetable. And it happens elsewhere up above. So just the last sentence where it says in schedule, for example, 3-year reporting interval.
Mhm.
If we say timetable, it's much more clear.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
Okay.
And then we have a random number 8 floating after number 5.
Well, that's that's because I can spell it out.
Oh.
So instead of
I understand.
maintenance of the required insurance policies identified.
Okay. Sorry.
Not as random as you thought.
No.
It wasn't.
Okay, now these
not a
would be
fugitive
conditions
aid.
of the building and the building permit. So first they do the site plan, everything has to get signed. All those other ones have to be ongoing. And then before they can get a building permit, they need to, have review by the building inspector of the final structural analysis. This should say timetable, right?
Timetable.
Yeah.
Pre-construction meeting.
Does that need to have someone from the planning board there to make sure that we actually do that? Or is that?
I mean, you don't normally, I don't think the board
Okay,
normally,
that's fine.
but you're welcome to, so we can add that in. If you volunteers have time to do such things.
I think it's fine.
Okay. And then they won't get the building permit until this is, the deed restrictions approved, the maintenance plan, RF conditions.
What is recordation? That's a funny word.
So when you, colloquially, we would say that something is filed with the county, but you actually record. It's a term of art. So.
Okay, cool.
Okay. All right. And then finally, at the end of the whole project, they have to submit as-built drawings. I don't know why this is justified like that. Okay. So again, I'll go through and fix typos and spacing before it's signed, but there will be no substantive changes other than what you've asked me to make.
Can we just make a quick, I'm sorry, can we just take a quick look at the whereas is?
Oh gosh, okay.
Yeah, just to make sure.
Okay, so the first one, there's an applicant and there's a project. The second one, it's shown on a site plan. And then if you look at Schedule A, we have, all the materials which you reviewed.
Yeah. Yeah.
The next one references that you need a special use permit and that, the special use permit is the special permit under Chapter 284. Location is on an existing structure in the city, which is the second highest priority as defined in Section 284-9. There was an environmental assessment form dated July 17th, 2020. In January, you classified it as unlisted and declared yourself lead agency. It's located near 2 historic districts. OPR weighed in on this particular project. In March, Tim Lamberto indicated that Arbor Management would limit the lease space on the building to 1 carrier, as it has done in other buildings which it owns. Whereas the planning board has considered visual simulations prepared by both the applicant and those opposed to the project. You've considered over 20 potential alternate project locations that's set forth in the alternate site summary, which is on file with the planning board. A duly noticed public hearing was opened on October 27th, 2020 and closed on June 8th, 2021, during which all those who attended the hearing were heard and ample time was provided for those wishing to comment. So that addresses the comments made earlier. Public hearing was held remotely because of COVID. Written public comments on the project were accepted during the application review and until June 18th, 2021. Including the comments listed in Schedule B of the resolution. And if you look at Schedule B, we tried to identify all of the comments that the board, written comments that the board received from the public. Whereas the planning board has reviewed parts 1, 2, 3 of the EAF and all available information concerning potential impacts of the project and found that the planning board has sufficient information on which to base a determination of significance. And whereas the planning board has considered the criteria contained in 6 NYCRR 617.7 and thoroughly identified all relevant areas of environmental concern.
Okay, thank you.
Are any other comments from the board about any part of this resolution?
Did we get to the point I discussed earlier, and I know I was in the wrong spot, about the maintenance up to par over the lifespan of the?
Yeah, that appears twice, Clark.
Oh, let me find it.
I trust you, it's there. All good.
All right, anything else from members?
So let me just show this for Clark so he can see it.
Okay.
So Clark, this is an ongoing condition of the special use permit. It says here that stealth enclosures, other conditions are maintained in accordance with planning board approvals. So there's a maintenance, they're maintained.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you.
There's additional language down below too that talks about fading and
Inspection and maintenance plan.
Yep, the submission. Thank you. Yeah, it's in item 5 that the inspection maintenance plan requires a response plan should the cell screening and materials become damaged or faded by wind weather.
Right.
we're assuming that these very long schedules, A and B, are all fine, right?
I mean,
I didn't read them all.
I wrote including but not limited to because
Okay, great.
the board members have approved everything and reviewed everything, and I might have missed 1 or 2, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see it.
it's on B. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
All right. This is our final draft, I believe. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
All right,
Who made
thank-
the motion?
John Cody made the motion.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is that Larry?
Yep.
All right, let's go through a roll call vote here. John Cody.
Yes. Yes.
All right, Gene,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Teresa,
Teresa, you're muted.
Ask me again. What'd you say?
what is your vote on the motion to adopt this resolution?
Which will give approval to this application. First, I want to say, thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Mike. You've done a great job. Thank you, board members. We've been on this a lot. But, and this is a great resolution. It is. But because to approve this resolution would be approving the application, I cannot do that. I'm not a robot. I am a member of a small community, of a small city. And I want the public, not one public came out and said, you know what? Even the ones that would benefit didn't come forth. So I just can't go with this. I just can't. So, and I want the public to know that your opposition, your strong and long opposition to this project is not being ignored by me. So I say no. This application, it shouldn't even be on our books. We're unique. Let's stay unique. We don't have to conform to the big cities or everything. So what? You don't have service when you get here. You can live with it. So no.
Thank you, Teresa. Laura.
In the workshop of April 13th, Verizon site acquisition specialist Charles Du Bois said that with the exception of Bliss and Providence Hall, no red areas were appropriate. And one of the reasons that nothing in the red area was appropriate was that, as he said, and he said this twice, it was because they are in residential areas. I think that everyone would have to agree that you cannot get more residential than 119 Columbia Street. The disabled and the elderly people who live there and its surrounding areas. For that reason, my vote is no to this resolution.
Thank you, Laura. Clark.
I'll vote yes.
All right, my vote is also yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear Clark's vote.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Just trying to record.
All right, well, thank you, everyone, to Victoria, to Mike for their guidance throughout this process, and thanks especially to the board members for all the energy that went into this permit application. Very grateful for it, and I think that all this hard work has done a great service for this community. So thank you to everybody on the board. For the applicant, I believe I need 3 copies of the site plan in order to stamp it for approval. So I can coordinate with you all about that. Beyond that, I think that wraps up our business for tonight, unless there's anything else from the board.
We were going to do the minutes. We were going to approve the minutes, but we don't have to. We can wait.
Let's do that at our next meeting. Yeah, for May. Yeah.
I just want to take a sec. This has been a very difficult application in a range of ways, and I think that I've tried to express my unhappiness with the applicant. That, thank heavens, is balanced by the respect I have for my colleagues on this board. And I think we've all done the best that we could do on a difficult application. And I really want to commend Teresa for her eloquence and conviction. And I think it was, beautifully said. And I very much appreciate having you as a colleague on our board.
Thank you, Larry. I love you.
Thanks.
Yeah, agreed, Larry. Thank you. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Teresa. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, we do. But before we do, thanks to you too, Steve, for manning the helm,
Thank you, Steve.
picking up the ball. I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Thank you, John. Second?
Second.
Oh.
All in favor?
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
you.
Goodbye.
Take care.